Hi everyone, welcome back to Books and Beats. Today we are going to be talking about Steve Biko's I Write What I Like. As usual, I've explained this to you many times before. I live in New York City, so please bear with me. There's going to be sounds coming from up, from the sides, from beneath, from everywhere. So I wanted to make sure that I recorded this and got it out on time, and so I'm just going to have to we'll all have to just bear with the sounds that will come. All right, so the copy that I have of I Write What I Like was originally published in 1978 in London, and then in 1996, I think in Johannesburg, South Africa. And so this was a full 8 years after the original publication date, and it's testament to the times, apartheid times, where certain books and literature were banned from the country, even if it was by people from the country and it was something that was useful. The copy that I have is 244 pages long, and I tried to look on Audible for an audio version of this, and they didn't have any, but I've noticed that on YouTube there's quite a few people who've uploaded self-recorded audiobooks of the book. So if you want to look in that direction, you can. Maybe you want to hear a chapter or two to get a sense of whether or not you want to buy this book. This one doesn't quite have a blurb. It has like book jackets, so I'm just going to read those. I Write What I Like features the writing of the famous activist and black consciousness leader Steve Biko. Before his untimely death in detention at age 30, he was instrumental in uniting black Africans in the struggle against the apartheid government in South Africa. This is a collection of his columns entitled I Write What I Like, published in the Journal of the South African Student Organization, SASO, under the pseudonym of Frank Talk. It also contains other journal articles, interviews, and letters written by Steve Biko at the time. It includes a preface by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Father Stubbs was a friend, priest, and confidant of the young Biko. His moving memoir contained within the book is a tribute to the courage and power of this young leader who was to become one of Africa's heroes. In the back it says Steve Biko was born in Tilden, Eastern Cape, South Africa in 1946. As a medical student, he founded a black student organization in 1969 and created a national black consciousness movement. The movement's aim was to combat racism in the South African apartheid government. He was banned in 1973, which prohibited him from speaking in public, writing for publication, and any travel. Biko was arrested by police in August 1977 and died in detention, naked and manacled from extensive brain damage 25 days later. He left a widow and 2 children. His death caused international protests and a UN arms embargo. Biko became a symbol of the anti-apartheid movement. An inquest in the late 1980s found no one responsible for his death, but in 1997, 5 former policemen admitted being involved. Right. So this book, I actually read it just before coming here. Was it just before coming here? I think so. It was 2 years before I came here. But basically, it was a time when I decided to give myself a 1-month break. At the time, I had my own business, so I could do that if I wanted to. So I went to my mom's home in Garankuwa, and I was like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to read. I had bought a whole bunch of books, and I was like, I'm just going to devour these one by one. And I remember when I was preparing to read Steve Biko, as I Write What I Like, I had been reading a fiction novel before that, so it was a little bit tougher to get into the book, and that's also because he uses proper English, like, I don't know how to put it, like maybe sophisticated language, academic language at times. And I also think that it was very cerebral. The way that he talks, the way that the book is written felt very cerebral because I was coming from a point of view of reading a fiction novel that was a lot lighter, and it was more like eating popcorn. And so I do recommend that when you go into reading this book, that you come kind of prepared, mentally prepared. And for me, it took me like maybe 1 chapter before I was like, okay, I'm fully in this. The style of writing, I feel like, is of someone who's aware that he's sharing very important ideas. He doesn't faff around. There's no faffing here. He is telling you straight to the core of what the message is that he's trying to bring about. I admire his ability to go straight to what he's trying to communicate and not faffing around. Of course, these are essays. These are selected, articles that he's contributed to in different newsletters and different publications. And I can understand that that's why it was so tight and clear and incisive. But yeah, I really admired that about his writing style. There's bits and pieces in here that give you a sense of who he is, but I would say for the most part, you get more of a portrait of his mental space and the ideas that he had to share at the time. I actually made two things that I want to share. The one is he was part of SASO, South African Student Organization, and that's the organization that he founded where the Black Consciousness movement kind of sprouted from. And I thought that it would be good to kind of read, as SASO defines it, what Black consciousness is. SASO defines Black consciousness as follows, and I have to say that this is part of a larger manifesto that's, I think, more than 10 pages long, if I'm not incorrect, that is way more detailed. Like before this section, there's a whole other section about what Black consciousness is not, what it is intended for, what it's not intended for. But this specific section that I'm reading is specifically speaking to what Black consciousness is as defined by SASO. So number one, Black consciousness is an attitude of mind, a way of life. The basic tenet of Black consciousness is that the Black man must reject all value systems that seek to make him a foreigner in the country of his birth and reduce his basic human dignity. Number three, the Black man must build up his own value systems, see himself as self-defined and not defined by others. Number four, the concept of Black consciousness implies the awareness by the Black people of power they wield as a group, both economically and politically, and hence group cohesion and solidarity are important facets of Black consciousness. Number five, Black consciousness will always be enhanced by the totality of involvement of the oppressed people. Hence, the message of Black consciousness has to be spread to reach all sections of the Black community. And this was so interesting. You'll see on the screen the little blurb at the bottom of where this manifesto, when it was adopted. It's like a piece of history, and also just to address something here, there's assumption here that when they use the word man, that they're referring to Black people, in the same way that when you read the Bible back in the day, it would say man and it meant person. Obviously over time words evolved, and this makes sense. So I actually wrote down like 5 main points that I took from reading this book, because I really had to find a way to synthesize my ideas about this book. And I feel like these 5 points or 6 points kind of give a good summary of what I took from the book. And then I'll also read a little bit from the book that I feel like would give a good, snapshot or picture of like the writing style and the kind of jewels that reside in this book. All right, so number one, I wrote, when we think of big figures in our minds like Steve Biko, we see and feel giants. But in actual fact, these are people that were once babies, that were just living through life, who had a passion, who had a purpose that led them to doing something that was big enough to draw attention, or that resonated enough with enough people that it drew worldwide attention, or at least like a lot of attention from a community, a specific community. And I kind of have this feeling because Steve Biko was a student, and I think the fact that a lot of his writings come from his time as a medical student, it made me think about how young he was and how he was just like everyone else, moving through life, seeing injustices and wanting to speak up about them. I mean, he was 30 years old when he was murdered, and he was murdered only because he was interested in dismantling the system of oppression that was in effect in South Africa. And so I feel like this book helps me remember that everyone that we view as a giant, whether they're a legend, a hero, someone who's a big political figure, was just a person, just like you and I, who just had something that they were passionate about, that they considered to be their mission or their value, their purpose, and they took that on and they moved forward. And as a result of its impact or its resonance with others, that's how it became big. And it's weird because I was also part of the Black Student Union at the New School, which is where I studied here in New York City. And ooh, the things that I learned at the Black Student Union were so powerful. I remember one particular trip, and the reason why I'm recounting this trip is because in one of these chapters, he talks about what he observed at other Black student organizations when he visited different universities in South Africa. And I feel like the closest experience I've had of that is going to the Black Student Union Black Solidarity Conference that was hosted at Yale University. And I remember being selected to go, or being part of the people who were able to go. I had applied for a scholarship to go and I got selected, and it was a pivotal shaping experience even at the age that I was. I mean, I was probably his age when I went, the age that he was when he passed away when I went. And it was just so fascinating to see different types of black people, but different black people and what they thought, how they moved, what we agreed on, what we disagreed on, how people chose to represent themselves, how people danced, how people ate, what they were interested in, what people drank. Like, it was just such a fascinating experience to be in a space where we were communing over our shared identity and our shared interest in advancing black lives and black people's liberation, but then also being able to be in a space where you don't agree, and you get to see what are the things. Being in spaces like that help me at least see what are the blind spots or shadow spots or gray spots or unseen spots in our community and what we could get better at. And maybe one day I'll do a story time about when I went to the Black Solidarity Conference at Yale, because there were so many things that I could still extract from that experience. But in any case, all of this to say that he was 30 years old. He was just an everyday person. He was a student, and he was murdered at 30. I'm older than him right now, and that's kind of shocking to hear and to think. Point number two, writing is a powerful way of immortalizing not only people but ideas. I really feel like this book is literally an archive of ideas, an archive of a mental state, a mindset. These are treasures, these are jewels that someone at some point, Steve Biko obviously, decided are important for black people, not only at that time, but in general, to learn and to take from. And I feel like it's such an act of love to sit down and to write ideas that you believe will liberate others, not only yourself but liberate others. And also, he was someone who clearly, when he was writing these ideas, knew that these were things that were going to put a target on his back. So not only was it an act of love and bravery and courage, he was doing this to share something that would liberate others but would probably put him in the line of fire, as it ended up doing. So writing, powerful way of immortalizing. And then after that, I also thought about how fortunate we are. This is step number 3, or thought number 3, that we live in a digital age where I can literally take my cell phone and record something and broadcast it. Yes, it might be 10 people who are watching my stuff, but that's not the point. The point is that we have the power to do so, to take a rinky-dink device to create media that we can share with others, whether it's a TikTok, an Instagram post, a story, a long form video, a short video on YouTube, whatever. Periscope, remember Periscope? Periscope, Snapchat, SoundCloud, what's this other one? Clubhouse, Mixcloud. There are so many platforms that we can share ourselves on and share ideas on. And I just feel like it just brought a new sense of responsibility that I have, and also gratitude that I have to having these kinds of resources now. Because actually, when I was looking for interviews that Steve Biko has done, I literally there were few and far between, and the quality wasn't the best. And so I just think about how, yeah, we're so lucky to be in a space where we can record media at actually a very high quality, a lot more easily than people back then did. Number 4, interlocutors, confidants, friends, supporters, people who know you, allies, people who have your back are so important to have. It's so important to be someone else's interlocutor, co-thinker, supporter. It's important to have those people in your life that act as that for you, because I feel like a lot of the work that Steve Biko has put forth may not have come forth if it wasn't for the people in his life who supported him, who saved his work, who saw his brilliance and thought it important to document it, to keep it, and to share it with the world, because if you think about what I said before, that the media and the interviews that he conducted are few and far between. So Father Stabs took on the responsibility of carrying Steve Biko's legacy forward in this format of, collecting his essays and putting them out in the form of this book. Number 5 is the last point that I wanted to say that I took from this book. The message that was resounding for me, that really shook me to the core. I think I cried when I read this book. I'm not going to lie. I didn't cry the same way I cried in Asata, because Asata's book was very much, yes, academic and, not academic, talking about going between her past and her current, the current being the story that we all know about, that made her famous, FBI's Most Wanted, and was a lot more personal. Whereas Steve Biko's book made me cry because I felt his spirit. I feel like I felt his spirit. I could feel his youth in his language and in his words. I could feel him as I was reading this book, and it made me cry to think that he died in such a painful way. He was murdered in such a painful way just because he had these ideas, just because he was speaking out and he was saying, I don't want us to be in shackles forever, especially in a country where we are the majority and we should be free. So I definitely felt emotional. Even doing the research for this, I was incredibly emotional. And even now as I'm talking about it, I'm feeling emotional. And that's because Sometimes I think about people like Steve Biko, Chris Hani, and I wonder what life would have been like if people like that had continued on, and who hadn't been murdered at the time that they did. So this is longer than usual, but I'm going to read a few paragraphs from this book just to give you a sense of one of the powerful things that he says. And I literally just opened this page in one of the chapters. This is the chapter where he writes about Black consciousness and the quest for true humanity. I mean, even just that title. But in any case, he says, Black culture, above all, implies freedom on our part to innovate without recourse to white values. This innovation is part of the natural development of any culture. A culture is essentially the society's composite answer to the varied problems of life. We are experiencing new problems every day, and whatever we do adds to the richness of our cultural heritage, as long as it has man at its center. The adoption of Black theater and drama is one such important innovation which we need to encourage and to develop. We know that our love of music and rhythm has relevance even in this day. Being part of an exploitative society in which we are often the direct objects of exploitation, we need to evolve a strategy towards our economic situation. We are aware that Blacks are still colonized even within the borders of South Africa. Their cheap labor has helped to make South Africa what it is today. Our money from the townships takes a one-way journey to white shops and white banks, and all we do in our lives is pay the white man either with labor or in coin. Capitalistic exploitative tendencies coupled with the overt arrogance of white racism have conspired against us. Thus, in South Africa now, it is very expensive to be poor. It is the poor people who stay furthest from town and therefore have to spend more money on transport to come and work for the white people. It is the poor people who use uneconomic and inconvenient fuel like paraffin and coal because of the refusal of the white man to install electricity in Black areas. It is the poor people who are governed by many ill-defined restrictive laws and therefore have to spend money on fines for technical offenses. It is the poor people who have no hospitals and are therefore exposed to exorbitant charges by private doctors. It is the poor people who use untarred roads, have to walk long distances and therefore experience the greatest wear and tear on commodities like shoes. It is the poor people who have to pay for their children's books while whites get them free. It does not need to be said that it is the Black people who are poor. We therefore need to take another look at how best to use our economic power. Little as it may seem to be, we must seriously examine the possibilities of establishing business cooperatives whose interests will be plowed back into community development programs. We should think along such lines as the Buy Black campaign, once suggested in Johannesburg, and establish our own banks for the benefit of the community. Organizational development amongst Blacks has only been low because we have allowed it to be. Now that we know we are our own, it is an absolute duty for us to fulfill these needs. So yeah, these are the kinds of things you can look forward to when you eventually decide to buy this book, because I think it is very much a book that is an important book to have on your bookshelf, not just as a showpiece, but really something to read and to return to. It's not something that, for me, it empowered me. It made me feel that I had power and I could make different decisions, and that I, in my own little way, had agency to shift things and to redirect my energy towards self-determination and away from inferiority caused as a result of being black and of living in a world that everything about me is downgraded as a result of blackness, whether it's my hair, my complexion, the fact that I grew up in a township, etc., etc. There's many things. I don't want to list them. You know them. So yeah, I'll leave it there. I do want to say one more thing. This idea of cancel culture, sometimes it doesn't often irritate me. It's just kind of like I'm able to watch and observe and just be like, roll my eyes a bit. But I think when I read this part in the back of this book jacket, where they talk about Steve Biko being banned in 1973, where he was prohibited from speaking in public or writing for publication and traveling, I think about what canceling really is and who in our history has genuinely been cancelled. And so sometimes I do get a little bit irritated by the term cancel culture, because people don't know what that means. Go look at the history of people who were banned or tortured and killed as a result of their ideas. That's true cancelling. Not that I'm saying people deserve to be cancelled. I'm just saying that sometimes that term just feels like it's being used very flippantly and it has no real meaning. And in any case, I'm going to end it there. Who would I recommend this book for? Anyone who has an interest in looking at their blackness as a place to launch, as a launching pad for power, personal power, economic power. This book is useful in finding and remembering that there's a lot of people who are in solidarity with us, regardless of where you find yourself in the world, because South Africans, we know very well that boycotts and the efforts of people from other countries definitely helped us, pulled us out of that system of apartheid. Of course, there are still things that could be improved in our country, but for the most part, being in solidarity, very important to read this book. If you're someone who is looking to hear other ideas, particularly the concept of black consciousness. And I'll stop there. Okay, the book community spotlight for today is a platform that has been started by a woman from Liberia named Bilfena Yawon. And the Instagram account that she started is called the Womanist Reader. The Womanist Reader is the name of the Instagram account that is named after Layli Phillips' anthology that she put together in 2006. I'll put in the description the name of that anthology and a description of what that anthology does, because I think that it would be a great book to have on your bookshelf. I have it on my own wish list and my TBR list. But yeah, just so you can make the correlation of where she got the name from. And she started basically during 2020, when one of the Black Lives Matter activists, 19-year-old Oluwatoyin Salau, was murdered. She was basically in despair, and that was the thing that kind of took her on a windy road to get to the place of starting this platform, where she basically looked at her bookshelf and she found some readings by the Combahee Women's Collective, and she used that as like a way to remember that actually reading books by other people, other Black women, is such an important way to bring yourself to yourself and to remind yourself that you are not alone, and that there's been people who've survived this before you came along who had it worse off. And so she kind of compiles PDFs that are written that have Black feminist thought at the core. Sorry, the Combahee River Collective. I always want to say the Combahee Women Collective, but that's not it. And she also has started a website. The website is called Bilfena's Library, and I'm just going to read the About Me page. In this here place, we flesh. Toni Morrison lives here. Paul Marshall lives here. Buchi Emecheta lives here, Audrey Lord lives here, Octavia Butler lives here, Miriam Layli lives here, Sonia Sanchez lives here, June Jordan lives here. I could go on and on. This is an ode to all the Black women writers who have gotten me through, who have provided me language. Because of them, we all have a manual and a guide. Because of them, we never have to experience painful firsts alone. There is safety in their words. There is a home in their words. This online library is a celebration of Black English and Black language. I see it as a tool in political education as well as a place for communal learning. This is my gift to the folks. Bill Fenner. And there's a lot of things on this website. She has a library section where she has books and short stories, essays, speeches, and interviews. She also has a section where she talks about different topics, and there's 4 main categories: abolition, Black feminism and womanism, Black maternity, and Black ecology. And then she also has a section where she talks about events, how you can donate and contact her. And I'll put the link to this website. It's called billfennerslibrary.com. And also the Instagram accounts that are attached to this account. Mixtape of the week. As usual, you all know that I have a big sonic crush on Nombuso Matebula. Today we have a mix that she put together for Ukozo FM, and I can just quickly look here because I was listening to it before this. It's called Ways and Behaviors, an opening mix by Nombuso Matebula. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It is such a perfect pairing with what I've been discussing today. Not only Bofena's contribution to the book community, and to the Black community, but also specifically women, but also very much what I spoke about in this, what I was talking about relating to Steve Biko. This mixtape that she put together is like traveling through space and time, and going into someone's kitchen table and then walking out and then taking a walk in the forest or on the street and then sitting down at a park bench with someone and listening in on a conversation. It's just beautiful. I don't even think that the description that I'm giving is fully giving you the feels. I think you should just go listen to it. It's 35 minutes long. It's incredible. It's amazing. I listened to it many, many times, and yeah, I'll put the link in the bio. Now, reflections. Reflections. Overall, I feel great. I have been feeling a little jittery lately because of things that have been happening that have been making me feel like I've been pulling myself away. I've been drawing away from myself, from my core, from my goodness, from my selfhood, from my center. And I've been finding it a little bit, let me not say challenging. I've been taking on the challenge of bringing myself towards myself, and I've been making an effort to enjoy the efforts that I've been making to bring myself towards myself, including going on the most beautiful meandering date with my partner, going on a ferry, going to this beautiful bar, having a drink, having a steak dinner, coming home, watching a movie, having long conversations with friends on the phone, and returning to reading, reading as like this thing that is just so powerful and useful and brings me wellness and health and is a form of self-care. It's been rocky, I'm not gonna lie. The last couple of weeks have been a little bit rocky, and there's also this past week, last week Friday in particular was like earthquakes, but it's fine. I'm back, and I think it was just another lesson in remembering that even when I am shooketh, there are ways to return to the self. I just have to create a map to remind myself who I am, where I am, and to find my way back. But overall, right now, I feel much better. I feel like myself. And I'm just excited to upload this video. Obviously, by the time you'll be listening to this, it's uploaded. I'm good. I hope you're doing well. And I hope you have a great day further. Goodbye.